We're looking at using Google Cloud's natural language processing for understanding health taxonomy in work you do internally, government published regulatory analysis, and research done by life sciences groups, insurances. The concept being, we wanted to very quickly be able to read large amounts of documents saved in traditional file formats like PDFs, text, HTML pages. If you think of the organizational knowledge sprawl you would see at an enterprise healthcare organization, you have critical work that's been done and only lives in one workstation. So the context for this presentation. My name's Alex Welsing. I am a consultant at Manat Health. It's a group within Manat, Phelps & Phillips. It's a legal regulatory policy group. Our clientele covers everything from life sciences, state, federal governments, insurance places, and we've got extraordinary depth of expertise in areas like Medicaid. I don't have any of that. I came over a year ago from a publishing tech startup where we were making interactive games inside of articles. We were being able to scrape the content on the page and make it interactive. I wanted to bring cutting-edge development using things like the NLP API to solve this very, very simple but understanding how complex the problem can get of connecting our documents together. So we'll walk through what we've done there, but if you want to be able to do something like this for yourself at your organization, we took a prototyping and tooling approach to this project. What we built isn't live yet. It's not something that's a model that we've deployed and count as a production implementation of natural language understanding in healthcare. We didn't do that. Instead, we've built something that we can start up and destroy in 30 minutes and extract the business value we need from it. When you think about the organizational resources you need to bring something like this to market, we were able to save a lot of effort there and avoid a lot of regulatory concern around what we're doing with this information because it's a very temporary analysis. So if you want to be able to follow along, create a new project in Google Cloud Platform. I'll show you how to start up the Google Cloud engine and load in a web app where you're going to display your final results, as well as do the actual calls. So a little further context around our product. Our client base wanted access to our knowledge collective. We've done work for public-facing foundations like RWJ, Commonwealth, CHIP. At the same time, we've done a lot of internal work just to keep our expertise up to date, where we do 50-state trackers looking at telehealth policies across the country. We put all of this available to our clients starting January 1, 2018. We had about a 4 or 5 month ramp time since I joined to official launch. So if you think of the timing of this development, we started NLP exploration in October 2017. We're still working on it today, but we're really excited about where we can move it forward. The initial concept we wanted to do, though, was very simply, this is a piece of content we've written. This is an analysis of a regulatory summary the government just released. It's 2,000 pages. We're going to do the hard work of having our lawyers read through, diligently analyze that work. It's my job on the web front to connect all of that information they wrote and looked at effectively to all of our other sources of information. And what I'm not going to do is ask a partner at the firm to look at a 300-word keyword list. And here are the other 25 examples of ones that have used these keywords. Does this make sense? It was kind of we realized very quickly that wasn't going to be the successful approach. So I wanted to be able to empower them to understand how our keyword strategy was working but also for them as subject matter experts to guide where we were going with our strategy in that regard. So we wanted to be able to share our tool with partners and authors. And finally, I wanted to reach extraordinary depths of accuracy and understanding of our source material. It would be very easy for us to categorize our work into 10 general buckets. This is Medicaid. This is life sciences work. But if we could understand hundreds of entities in our documents and have a salience connected to each of those, the more content we build, the less likely we are to get lost along the way and to lose investment we've already made in previous work. It helps tell a better story if we've got a really good data approach in that last box. So here's the breakdown for the tech demo. We use the command line interface to extract out text from PDFs. This is PDF to text.py. It's a pretty simple script. We then transfer the text documents to Google Cloud Storage, where you very efficiently can do calls to the natural language API. And it's all in-house. We wanted to be able to keep this very much in the Google Cloud platform. Then we call the ML. Once we have that output, it's going to give us a JSON. It's going to save the JSON into the Google Cloud and Google Compute Engine. And we're focusing specifically on analyze entities. I'll show you analyze sentiment and analyze categories as well. But we really got the most value out of using analyze entities option within natural language. So we would then want to be able to deploy for end users to be able to view the results of what we did. We would want to be able to share in a green check mark HTTPS location what it is we were just looking at. So I'll show you two examples in that regard. One is a further built out CMS integration with our natural language processing, which is a user interface using Ghost and Firebase, where users are able to log in and do this whole process themselves. And then I'll also show you how to launch it in a simpler version on Hexo, which I don't know if there's any developers who run their blog on GitHub, but GitHub Pages and Hexo integration is a very common way of hosting, just posting your information. So that's what we're aiming for, just posting the information. And we do look at a wide range of document sizes. And I'll give you a little bit of context around where there's some challenges there. I want to give this boilerplate a really good highlight because it's an amazing organization that I've looped into coming from a very tech startup backgroundy context. I would say looking around this conference, there aren't many organizations that have the depth of legal expertise in the healthcare space. And what I would most love to get out of this year's attendance is for 10 of my colleagues to want to come. Our experts in data analytics who help provider systems, take looks at their entire collection of data. And we've got sharing projects in LA County. I would love for this tech community to help bridge the gap with subject matter experts further. And for those of you who are maybe extremely on the tech side and are looking for partners on the legal and regulatory consulting side, that's where I would really say, I'm not your guy. I would love to introduce you to my colleagues. So, very quickly, I'd like to share a bit about our approach towards investing into NLP and AI, because this is a lean team. Insights at Manat Health, the publication that I'm a part of, consists of a senior director who oversees the editorial vision. We have 2 senior managers who help with the production of the content, the working relationships with the clients. And I manage the front end. I manage all of the publication of the information, the things that go on the site, and our budget's rather limited. So I still had very real objectives I wanted to accomplish at our organization. at the same time, I know where we're trying to get to. I know what our clients would like from us, and I know what our organization would like to bring to the table in sharing information. When you're at a conference like this, there's an opinionated stance on open and democratized web that needs to be shared and advocated for. These two examples I've thrown up on the screen are two kind of disparate cases cited from EFF. The first being the Freedom of Information Act Fine of the Year. Someone wanted to know information about sexual assault in Texas prisons. It's the type of information that's a critical health question for our country. And there are advocates and data scientists out there who spend hours of their free time writing into government organizations, asking for information. It was going to cost $1 million just for the labor of scanning in the documents to be able to complete this FOIA. That is a very real example of the cost for access to this information and the opportunity we have bringing NLP into marketplace. I didn't get anything that was that sophisticated, but I knew we wanted to play in the space already. We were ready, and the technology is already available that myself, as not an expert developer, can put us on the right path for considerations of how to intelligently bring this technology to market. The second example is another extreme where you have to consider the full severity of the work you can do. As developers, as data scientists, the models you make, if you want to bring something to production, it can't be racist. This letter is 42 organizations that penned to Axon, which is a provider of law enforcement equipment. They were looking at bringing to market or beginning research after putting together an AI ethics board into facial recognition technologies. The people who would be most affected by these technologies you work on have to be a part of the process from the very start of the development, consideration of the idea, through the working models, final sign-off. This, I believe, is one of the only ways we're going to successfully get, as a collective, to a place where we feel very confident and safe with the models we're building. More practically, think about what your day-to-day work life is like. When you're thinking of the two options of where you can go with data science and building models for AI, I'd encourage you to check out, obviously, the other sessions that are deep in this space. But you see the work that you can be doing, the experimentation, the testing, the iterations on this model. We want to be in this middle bucket. We want to be working as a group all together, experimenting, writing scientific papers, analyzing it, and feeling comfortable with the security we've brought. Of course, there is still closed source development. I'm not saying that your organization is not going to have a proprietary take on a model that Google has made. But I think it increasingly unlikely that your internal organization is going to be trying to build the natural language API. You want to build the application that uses it. You want to be able to train your own models for something like that. But we're not going to want to be in this left bucket, where you as a developer or a data scientist, your team, no matter how well-constructed, well-developed, you don't want to be standing out isolated. You don't want to be bringing to market production models that haven't been proofed by the community at large. We want a stringent testing system, and these questions weighed really heavy on us when we were looking at NLP, even for just analyzing our own writing and regulatory work. So here's the question. You've got these two options. I would love, out of this group, because I've kind of seen the job titles and organizations who are represented here. If I could get a quick close your eyes and raise your hands for either the first or second, I would be fascinated to know for my own knowledge. So quick, eyes closed, raise your hand if our first option is we're not going to be able to get there right now. You're not going to be able to hit production because the regulation, the technical obstacles, it's not clear enough. We are not in a safe space to be able to launch. Or we're in the bottom question, where right now, you could go home after this conference and start a project on Monday, work with stakeholders, diligently build a new tool that you could bring to market in your company by the end of the year that would safely have in consideration the second. And I apologize, there was one person who'd closed their eyes and raised their hand. Now we can ask the question. All right, close your eyes, raise your hand for one. And second. Wonderful. That's really exciting to see. It's exciting to see that, probably 70% of the room was enthusiastic about our second option. Truth is, I feel like whichever you pick is going to be the route you go. This slide on the right, some of you might recognize it. This is produced from our US Senate. It's an analysis of the solutions we could take to prevent a Y2K crisis. What I love about this is on the left hand, on your y-axis, that's months to implement. Data expansion is going to take us 48 months to get there. But it gives us the highest performance reliability standards against a Y2K bug. TensorFlow came out last year. You think of the context around the development of our space. And it's not just software development. It's the architecture. It's the hardware that you run your models and the networkings that you're running it on. This seems irrelevant, but we will equally have similar lack of understanding when we look back on our current analysis of AI today, where we really missed the mark on some things, but I do like just to rely on the experts. I'm not going to be making any of this up myself. I'm not a leader in machine learning and artificial intelligence. I'm a user. I'm someone who practically has day-to-day tasks I want to get done. And I am grateful to be in a space where leaders like Fei Li are carving out this space for us to be able to do our work. So from 2017, during her session, these were 4 principal components for democratizing AI that are essential for, if we go back to stakeholder involvement, you look at the Axon example, and this is a perfect chance to consider whether or not we're really looking at a democratized AI scenario. Making sure everybody who would be impacted by an artificial intelligence solution has access to computing resources to test it, has access to training and resources so that they themselves can become the talent that works on these projects. Making sure the algorithms and the data that you're using and bringing to market is accessible to a scientific and open community is going to make this slide a lot more fun. I've been playing in the bottom left-hand corner, where our budgets will range from, tens of dollars. I look at, if I can spend less than $100 and deliver you some sort of business value, I only have to save someone 10 minutes to make back that $100. So I look at big opportunities to carve out time savings. and that's prototyping tools. It's not going to be something that can live forever. It's going to have instabilities. There are clear spots where that wasn't built out because it wasn't supposed to be. We don't want to spend our developers' time working on something that's not going to come to market. And practically, my organization doesn't have a need for an enterprise natural language processing tool. We got a question we want to answer, and AI helped us do it. This top right corner, though, I think we're all passionate about getting there. The potential impact of bringing to market a IoT healthcare device that is able to consistently monitor your glucose levels. And it works even when the power goes off and the internet's gone. And it's able to help predict critical failures of your health. We all know we want to be making new markets and changing people's lives with AI. But the risks around that are scary, I would say, for developers. We've got some concerns, but primarily for investors. There's maybe $10 billion a year in the US pouring into AI research. And I think you could short that. I think you could safely say 10xing that AI research would still be a fair, safe investment. You clearly haven't seen it, though. And until some of those regulatory, legal concerns get worked through and resolved, and there's safe space to play and bring to market, then maybe we continue working on prototyping tools and then bring them to internal tools and continue to develop a culture that knows how to use AI applications, wants to build these things, and has tested it rigorously. You don't want your first one to be the one that goes to market. So there's a lot on this slide, and I apologize. Let's start with the most interesting information. This is a paper, I believe this was a Google team that they presented initially in February, and it won a bunch of awards in June. Obfuscated gradients give a false sense of security, circumventing defenses to adversarial examples. That's frightening, I feel. At the conference they won Best Presentation, there were 8 proclaimed secure white box algorithms. And this took them all down. This came out in March. TensorFlow 1.0, which most data science, not that there's not other models like that. It's not like you can't use Keras. It's not like there's not H2O.ai. But TensorFlow is a really good example. You look at the forks, there's clearly interest. That's not enough time in between these two events happening for me to feel confident yet. The other side of this is the context, is the thing that's weighing us down in this consideration. We got Tim Berners-Lee in 1989. This is, I don't think it makes sense to start a conversation about open web before that. And then we have the cost estimates for that Y2K bug. It looks like Aetna might be at 195 million if Y2K doesn't go well. And those figures seem extreme, and they seem goofy now, but they didn't at the time. I feel like we are going to have similarly not goofy, but misunderstandings about where we are in the cycle as we see in 1999. And this last component just elaborates on the idea of investing in tools. The left framework, I would highly encourage you, honestly, if there's anything you took away out of this development talk, it would be that framework. It wasn't even originally intended for developers. It's the framework for strategic, sustainable development. Came out of a group in Sweden in the early 90s. It's about sustainability in the world. And it really drills it down into a systems level. If we talk about the system of AI development in healthcare, That would include all of the algorithms, the talent pool, the hardware that's available for you to run it in, the end devices, the systems that subscribe to it, the entire ecosystem of everything that you touch. It's very hard to change that, and it's a collective effort to make changes to the system. But making tools is easy. And tools are what we use to take action in our day-to-day jobs. If we've got better tools to do the work that we want to accomplish, there's tangible benefits in our ability to execute the organization's strategy. Do your job better, do your job easier thanks to the tools. Now you can execute your strategy. And if we align our strategy with some smart goals, that feeds all the way up to a great system. But the main thing that I can say that we're focusing on right now is making sure we've got talent who we feel comfortable working with, and we've got a similar dialogue around these tools. We want to test a lot of platforms and services. I'm here at Google's presentation, but I would love to run similar experiments across the enterprise solutions here. There is a certain amount of, you don't want to factor your efforts too much, and I've been very happy in the ecosystem I operate in. I do all of our work in Google Cloud Platform. But you want to evaluate the platforms, and your product should still deliver business value. If your manager comes up and asks, hey, I see these API calls. What is this? There should be something that you're trying to get out of it. One of the additional components of Framework for Strategic Sustainable Development is backcasting. Understanding where you want to arrive and where you are today, and understanding what steps you would be taking to get to that eventual end goal. As opposed to forecasting, saying, historically, here's what we've done. Based off of those projections, we project we will get here. This is the opposite. We know if we want to get to market, we are going to need a great development team that's fully bought in and it's well-staffed. We need stakeholder buy-in from the community. You need the patients who are going to be affected by your product to know about it from the get-go, from the first time you had the idea to use AI to better analyze rhythmic patterns of the heart. You should probably talk to some heart patients and find out about their experiences. Having regulations in place would help. Having very clear guidance in that space. And that's going to be a combination from the government getting involved, as well as from the tech side, being leaders and advocates. Cloud-first architecture for data, I think that makes sense. We're at Google Next. And the ability to run on-device and in-cloud computation for the results, I do think mentioning on-device calculations is important. One of the really interesting examples is TensorFlow.js. But I think fundamentally, being able to do localized calculations is extremely helpful. So I want to pivot now. This is the switch over to practical, here's what the work looks like. So how to analyze hundreds of pages. I'll give you a couple slides on our consideration, the development process, and then we'll switch over to the live demo. This is just a consideration pyramid for when you are taking on a project like this. Who are you going to be presenting this to? If you are sharing the work you're doing with this, with a development team lead, for example, someone who's very interested in the hows and whys this works, but wouldn't be concerned about the appearances, maybe you don't need to worry about throwing up during the prototype development a firewall that secures all of this within your own internal network. Or you don't need HTTPS access, and it's just going to show up as a nice, beautiful IP address that they know you could deploy to a front end if you wanted. On the other hand, if you're going to be taking this work and you're going to spend 4 or 5 hours building something that you feel really comfortable and confident in, and you're going to be sharing it with senior executives in the finance side who really don't have an interest in the hows and the whys of launching a server in Compute Engine and why that might not be it's not a necessary expense or time sink, but it looks pretty. Having the green check mark in a nice formatted URL does help get the point across clearer. And if that's all the amount of lift you need to do to go from they don't understand it at all to the idea clicks, I see where this would help us and we would want to do more of this, or even better, they see it and they've got their own ideas of, I would love something like this to solve this problem. Then that's a fruitful conversation, and then it's worth going ahead and adding in. I've given you can just throw in a start bot. You can get a domain name for less than 50 cents from cheapname.com, and between those two, you've got really no excuse for it not to show up as an HTTPS product. Next is the actual compute engines that we used. Simple enough. We did a 16.404 instance, threw 50 gigs of standard memory on it. Important details that we've got. I went ahead and allowed full access to the cloud APIs. You're still going to need to enable the natural language API once you get into the platform and you've got your project. But you also want to make sure you allow traffic. And below this setting, set a static IP address for this engine for external use, because that way you can connect it. Hexo and Ghost were the two CMSs we use when looking at displaying our information. Ghost is a startup that has really, they've committed themselves to being a non-profit entity, and they've been working on a really great publishing platform that I've been satisfied to use, and we're bringing to market for an internal blog. So you've got the directions for Ghost. I would highlight that you need to use like a Node V6 or V8. It doesn't support 10 or 9. That's the one we added in Firebase. I've shared the code for that, but I haven't cleaned it up for you in a really, really presentable way, because your development team knows how to do this. You could give them these instructions and say, bring them your idea. Here's the documents we would like to categorize and organize. They would know how to be able to do the Firebase, but I have shared the example as well. And on the Hexo side, this is just dead simple to use. You're able to generate all of your static files in a second for 50 or so. So Hexo is a really easy example to be able to get something up and moving. And what's interesting is you can do all of your like user interface things, like making. I could source to this team right here. If each of you would like a document analyzed, just put it into Ghost, tag it with what you think you would like it to, what it should be, and then I could export all of that and import it into Hexo. So they complement each other really well as far as two CMSs just to be able to share the info. So here are very helpful instructions on the top one is how to deploy Ghost on GCP. Middle one is linked to where the Firebase theme. One other example I'll throw out there on this is when we did the Ghost integration to be able to make this call, we didn't do any editing on the back end. This is on a theme level editing only improvement. So I kind of threw a curveball at the development team, and I'd like to give a shout out to Braden Kelly. He's a father now, and helped us bring to market the Firebase example. Really took the idea and ran with it and worked around challenges that your team wouldn't need. You wouldn't need to introduce these challenges to your product, but we had them in ours. And finally, the bottom one is where all of the analyzed entities, the natural language API, is located. So let's go ahead and hop over to the tech demo. And, oh, wow. I apologize, the first screen you see isn't a Google product. That is a deployment engine. I know the last slide we left on said, let's talk about how to prep the documents, but I'd like to first share with you. This is the front-end example of Ghost. So I would like to find a document to analyze. I'm going to quickly log into. No. Let's say we want to analyze this text document we did on House plans to consider White House rescissions package. CMS says no to lifetime limits for Medicaid coverage. I'm going to come over to here. And this is all just text input, but for the command line interface. Here, we've added in content types. All of this information is stored in Firestore. So if I wanted to then go and edit the content type or add in new key topics, it's as simple as going to my Firebase site and adding that into the catalog. So here I'm indicating what I initially think this document would be about. I think it's insurance and marketplaces, fraud and abuse. I provide a little bit of additional info in the top line just for visibility on the front end. And finally, let's take, this is a 6-page document, so it's not too bad. We've pasted all the information in. There's nothing going on. So we get our spinning wheel. And I've timed it. It can be everywhere from under a minute for something small to taking several minutes for larger scale content. What I think is actually super helpful. Oh, did it pass? Great. So let's see what we got. This spits out. So here's what we submitted. And then down here, we have what we wanted. So if I was empowering a partner or a consultant at our organization, I could first give them this resource. Here's the URL to go to. If they take the first step of putting in their information here, then from my end, I can take what they've shared and bring it to market on the product, or I can start a meaningful conversation with this subject expert who put the work together, and I can ask them, which of these on the front page would make sense to tag your content for? And we can scroll through. Just for a little bit of clarity, the two items we're seeing on the screen, you have salience, which is really actually, that's what I found the most helpful. Salience is the importance of that word within the entire document. You're able to add up count as well, but, and I will say, the count gets filtered out very nicely also. Some additional info that I think has been actually very helpful and illuminating. This is the sentiment analysis, and we printed out basically in a by-line example. I feel like someone who's good at text manipulation would clean up some of this before it goes in. I wouldn't keep in see page 5 for coverage. But let me find an interesting sentence here. I have genuinely found unique insights about the regulatory analysis that's gone published or about research based on this feature specifically. So I've zoomed in here. Let's look at this very positive one. Other measures include research on new non-addictive pain medications, loan repayment for SUD providers, and the creation of comprehensive opioid recovery centers intended to serve as treatment models. That's a pretty positive sentence. There's a lot of loaded information that you understand why it would flag. That's fine for our specific coverage. This is something we wrote. I think where it's even more interesting is when you see something like this 0.9 positive green in a published piece of government regulation or a announcement of upcoming regulation. Because regulation's not particularly emotional. It's not supposed to have these flowery languages. And if I have time, I can share a specific example of one we found uniquely passionate advocacy within one line. And looking at the time, I'm going to now pivot over to showing you how to do. Oh, lastly, they've got categories as well. I'm just showing this to you to show it hasn't gotten there yet. The categories API is fantastic if you have broad ranges of content. If you're specifically within one section like law and government or healthcare, it might not be as informative for you because I kind of knew our content was healthcare and law related. That didn't help narrow it down for me. So, who wants to see it in the council side? Let's find a good little workspace. So, really quickly, let me show you. These are examples of the different web apps we've used to deploy the info. I think all of these are kind of accessible in one state or another. Making a brand new hexo post or site is as easy as sudo hexo init. Let's call this GCP live. And it's going to go ahead and pull in all of the info I need to have a working web app. Well, that runs. Now I almost regret even giving it the option to do so. Let's go and look at some of the text documents. In my Google Cloud storage, I'll show you the final result of what we've done. So you have first final JSON outputs. If you look at the file sizes, it's substantial in the sense of that for a JSON, things reaching half a meg, 1 meg plus is a lot of information. So realize that each of these is going to seem unnecessarily large. This is what it looks like at the outset. You really do need to filter down into it to extract the information. But let me take my Q2. Here is the text output. I would like to show you PDF to text all the way through. And I feel like I can get there. All right, so let's knock this out. I've got Q2 content in a zip in the cloud. So let's Did we get it? Yeah, we did. You know, instead of me trying to live code that specific function of it, what I'm going to do is show you kind of the cool, fancy final product of what our analysis was. I've got the instructions in later slides that we didn't get to on how to actually do the PDF to text. It's super simple. But I am really interested in sharing what this final output looked like. This is 25 of our most recent publications that we took a look at. And the final outputs of that JSON, I just exported out to Tableau. And what you're seeing on the left, on the y-axis, is salience per entity. And on the left, on the x-axis, are keywords. I'm having to zoom in a lot to even get to a point where the keywords aren't so spread out, because across 25 documents, we would have tens of thousands of entities generated. And it listed those all the way across. But let's keep zooming in to see what some of these look like. And all of a sudden, I'm able to start getting some real insight into connections between documents from a source like this. So for example, CMS was 0.0141 importance to this analysis on the new payment model, versus something like this that came in at 0.1385. And I know all of these documents have info related to CMS that reached a critical mass to categorize it in here. White House came up in this group of 5. We can view each individually. With that being said, here are the last slides in 30 seconds. Here's that. Here's an initial result. Here's an initial result. Here is the video of me walking it through on Ghost. And here is the final wrap-up slide of what we came into it with and what we left with. It's been a really exciting project. And if I've got 15 seconds left, I just have to thank countlessly the team that helped support this work, the senior leadership, as well as Lauren Thomas, my fiance, for helping me walk through the deck and get here today. Thank you so much for your time as well.